Hello, welcome to the beginning of the Shiftathon read-along vlog. In case you missed it, this is a readathon that is all about reading urban fantasy books. I will link my TBR on the screen if you're interested in what exactly I'll be reading, although you can also just watch this and see what I'm reading. I don't know if I mentioned this in my intro, this is my outro face, but this video was voted on by my bibliothecary supporters, so every month my bibliothecary supporters get to vote in a poll for a video topic that I will do, and this is the one that won for February. If you would like to participate in my content in that way, voting for books that I'll read, we have a quarterly buddy read, we have a year-long reading challenge, a Discord group, lots of stuff. I will leave that on the screen. But I'm actually starting the day before Shiftathon. I mean, Shiftathon starts tonight at midnight, so like, I'm starting, I don't know, 9 hours early. But that's because one, I'm not gonna just like not read for this whole time, and two, during the week sometime I'm probably gonna have a day where I'm really busy and not read at all, or read very little, and this will make up for it. So even for my own readathon, I fudged the rules a smidge bit. I mean, I wouldn't start reading like a week in advance for a readathon, but like a few hours before, sure. Anyway, I have started Blood Fever by Karen Marie Moning, which is the second book in the Fever series. I'm already like 25% of the way into that, just because these books are so easy to read, which is why I wanted to do a readathon for it. What I do like about urban fantasy is they will say at the beginning, like the first couple chapters, like sort of what happened in the last book. So, and they might be over the head a little bit with it, like this book is doing that a smidge, because there was a whole prologue in this book that was like, here's all the stuff, and I'm like, great, thanks, because it's been like over 6 months since I read it. And then it keeps sort of like mentioning some stuff, and I'm like, yeah, you already told me that. Also, there might be spoilers in this for some of these books, like nothing, I don't think I'll do anything major, but I don't know. There's some things I'll probably want to discuss about some of these books. I will say I have gotten far enough into Blood Fever that there's been some stuff with Barons again, and like she basically discovers there's like something in like the basement below his garage, and she hears like almost like howling or like an inhuman noise, and I'm like, is this man a werewolf? Like, this was the whole thing with book one where I was like, what is he? Because he was like standing off with a vampire, and then like all of the shades are scared of him, but then he was reacting to religious iconography, which is not a werewolf thing, so I don't know. And people have told me that like that's not even revealed until like later books anyway, which I'm like, oh my god, like I just want to know what he is, but don't tell me. But like, how long are we gonna drag this out? Anyway, so that is fine. And then I did start the audio of Circus of the Damned by Laurel K. Hamilton. I was originally going to do The Lunatic Cafe, which was book 5 of the Anita Blake series. I'm reading book 3, which is The Circus of the Damned, because I kind of figured out it'd be kind of nice, since I haven't read the series in like years, to go back, not to the very beginning, because the first couple books are like eh, but to when some of the key characters are introduced, and this is sort of like the beginning a little bit of like this love triangle, which is the beginning of what eventually becomes like a reverse harem in this, before reverse harems were even like really popular. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I will say that the narration is super easy to listen to. I've been listening to it while I've been playing games on Switch. Because I'm just like doing something mindless, like I'm playing like farming sims and then like doing that in the background. The narration's a little bit like over the top. Like one of the characters, Jean-Claude, is a French vampire, right? And the voice the narrator uses, maybe it's because I have him so sped up, I listen on like 2.5 to 2 speed, he sounds like Pepe Le Pew, and I'm like, and he's supposed to be all like seductive, and I was like, this is not a seductive French accent. Like, it's literally like Pink Panther, Pepe Le Pew, over the top French accent. So we'll see how this goes, because I really like Jean-Claude as a character, and having him have like that horrendous accent is gonna be probably not fun. But I'm also listening to the audio because I've read these books before, like numerous times. So yeah, I'm hoping that I can get through a lot of these like pretty quickly, and maybe I will get to all the books. Because after this, I have the next book in the Shifter series, and then I want to read the first book in the Kate Daniel series. So at the rate that I'm reading these, which is fairly fast, I might be able to get to all 4. We'll see. I'm 56% of the way into Blood Fever. I know, I'm reading it very fast. All of my nighttime sounds are on, but I wanted to do an update. That's why you hear the sounds of like white noise in the background. I continue to be like, what the fuck is Barons? I think at this point, one of the main reasons for still reading this series, because it's just like, it's just fine. And like, it's very dated, and it has some bad things about it. I'm just like, what the fuck are you? The other thing is that I noticed that is just so nostalgically urban fantasy, which is why we're doing this readathon, is Mac is like this girly girl whatever, but she's like really into cars and knows everything about them. It's so classic, like second wave feminism, strong female character, which was like peak early 2000s urban fantasy leads. She's slightly more nuanced than maybe some of them are, because it's like, but I wear pink and I'm a girly girl, but I know everything about cars. I'm like, okay, Mac. Also, this book is a little bit more glaring with the like problematicness of Barron's, I'd say, because in this book he's getting to be slightly more of like a potential love interest, like there's a little bit of like flirtation there. And I will say, there's a trope within urban fantasy that happens a lot that's problematic, of like the assault or sexual assault of women used as like a plot device, and this still sometimes has that, like, well, I mean, it does have it. Like, there's a character who's basically like a sex fae, and he sexually assaults Mac because he like basically makes it so that she is like overcome with lust for him, even though she says no. The thing that this book does a little bit differently, and I'm not saying that this is like, the bar's on the floor here, but the thing that this book does differently is like, for example, after that happens, she tells that character like, no means no, it never ever means yes, blah blah blah. So like the messaging in the narrative is like more positive, but it's still one of those things, it's like, it's, you can see it's so dated from how that stuff's still included. Same thing is true with like Barron's a little bit. He still continues to be like very aggressive with her as far as like manhandling her, and now that it's getting to be more of like, in book one I had not less of a problem with it, but it only really happened once, and I was like, he's not a romantic lead like at all. Now it's kind of like, will they? Which I know that eventually he does become a love interest, but like now that the book is actually hinting at that, it's like, oh man, like he like stamps on her toe to get her to like stop saying something one time, and like it's said a lot that like he doesn't sort of like know his own strength, or he does but like he forgets to keep it in check sometimes. He'll grab her really rough, whatever, she'll always be like, that's gonna leave a bruise, so that's bad. And then there's just a scene where he was going to tattoo her without her consent, and again the book is like, you can't do that without my consent, like you cannot do this, and he basically is like, way to stick up for yourself, I'm not gonna do it, but you have to wear this other thing instead, and eventually if you make me I will do it. And I'm like, ugh. So I'm hoping there gets to be more nuance with him. I'm thinking there is, because my friend Sarah Jane loves this series, and I don't believe she would love it if he wasn't eventually nuanced, but right now I'm like, ugh, stop. Like, it makes me uncomfortable reading this as somebody in 2022, even though this was written in like 2007, maybe after. Maybe Circus of the Damned, the other book I'm reading, was written in 2007. Anyway, it was written a while ago. So I'm like, so yeah. I knew this going in, that I was gonna get problematic tropes. The nice thing about urban fantasy, like I just said, is read it so quickly. Oh my gosh, it makes you feel like a reading god, because you can just read it so fast. There's a lot of repetition in here, but there continues to be like good lines. And then I'll be like, why is this put in the middle of just like fluff and a lot of repetition? So I'm hoping for improvements along the way here. I just finished Blood Fever on day one, exciting. And it's 2 stars. The first book was also 2 stars, but maybe more like 2.5. Like I liked this one probably less than the first book, but I'm still like, whatever. There's something about, again, because urban fantasy is so nostalgic for me, that like, I read it so fast, so I don't hate that I'm reading a 2-star book. But it's definitely like so dated. Also, there's a thing that in like every urban fantasy book where like the protagonist gets locked up somewhere and potentially tortured, like always at some point in the series that happens, usually multiple times. That happened here, typical. I'm more about Barron's as a love interest again, because now there's been like more things. They end up making out next to a dead body, which I'm like, okay, Sons of Anarchy. Like, there's nothing hot about this. I don't think I can pull for it. I'm thinking he has to be a werewolf. Don't tell me, I might look it up, or some kind of like druid version of a werewolf. Because he did this thing where he was like smelling her. There's a symbol associated with it that someone was like, that's the Omega symbol, whatever. As like, oh, funny haha joke, but she like wasn't getting it. I'm like, I think this man is aware of something, or a shifter of some kind. I also think a couple other characters might be too. I could be wrong. Someone said that like you don't find out until like book 4, which is just like so annoying. Also, this book ends on like such a cliffhanger. Like she sees something that's pretty integral to the plot, because this book went like a little bit off. Like it's sort of like a side thing happening from like the main plot stuff, honestly. But she sees the thing that she's been tracking, and she knows who has it and everything, and then the book ends and doesn't tell you. Really? So yeah, I don't think I'm going to continue with this series, this Shiftathon, just because I was thinking about it if I really liked it and wanted to binge it, but I think I would get really annoyed. So I think I'm going to have some time between books here, which doesn't really bother me. But I'm also like, do you want to keep reading a 2-star series? But I might. I'm going to now move on to Kate Daniels, which I'm a little like, oh, because people pretty much across the board say that the first book is like not that great. So I probably won't be that into any of the books that I'm reading for Shiftathon, really. Maybe the Anita book, just because it is nostalgic, and maybe the 3rd book in the Shifter series. Maybe I should read that next then. But I don't know, because I didn't like the 2nd book in the Shifter series. I'm gonna go with Kate Daniels. I'm gonna go with Kate Daniels and then Shifter, and then it'll probably be the end. Also, I have been very like, I don't know, do I want to read Crescent City? Because everyone's talking about it, because today the 2nd book came out, and Crescent City is technically a urban fantasy, so at the end of the readathon, I don't know if I'll include it in this, I don't know if I'll have enough time to even start that book, I might read Crescent City. Just everyone's giving me FOMO, and I just want to know if it's like kind of fun. I don't know. We'll see if I do that. So I listened to more of Circus of the Damned, the Laurel K. Hamilton, Anita Blake book last night. And this series holds up. Ooh, I'm gonna put you here. Nice. It is amazing the difference when I was reading Blood Fever, which was published in 2007. And when I continued to read Circus of the Damned, I was like, is this actually gonna be like really bad and like really dated and what? It's not. It's genuinely good. I'm getting used to the audiobook narration too, and the audiobook actually has like cinematic things to it. Like during fight scenes, there'll be like music and stuff in the background, which is kind of fun. Genuinely, the writing, when you're putting these 2 series, not that these 2 series need to be compared, but when I'm reading 2 series like back to back, and comparing them, Anita Blake is so good. Like it's genuinely, the writing is good. There's parts of the writing that are like funny, and I don't go into my books like trying to laugh, but like there'll be lines where I'll be like, ha! Like as they say something. The characters, even the background characters, are like really good in a way that, again, I don't feel like the Fever series has that. And I don't think it's just nostalgia for me, like because a lot of these characters I've forgotten about because this is book 3 and I read this series like so long ago. I'm really liking it, and I'm like stunned. I actually text Matthew, and I was like, this is a really good series. He's like, I know, but I doubted my younger self. For years, I've had disclaimers on these books because I haven't read them in so long, and I'm like, yeah, like I know they're probably like not the best, and they're really dated, and blah, blah, blah. And these are still like some issues, sure, but so far in this book, not anything really like glaringly bad at all for it being written in 1995. And I know there's things in like later books that aren't necessarily like great or whatever, but like in comparison to, again, the Fever series, which I think is more popular in a lot of book spaces, I'm like, Anita Blake deserves more. Like I know that as a series, like Anita Blake is pretty well loved. Like I think it's like a New York Times bestseller or whatever. But in like book talk and booktube and whatever, I don't hear about it very often or at all. Besides myself talking about it, and Matthew. It's good. It like genuinely holds up, so I'm gonna need y'all to at least read like the first handful of books. Like if it gets to the like erotica smut stuff and you want to stop, that's totally fine and justified. However, like these books are good. Like just the Monster of the Week stuff that happens, along with the overall meta plot, along with all of the characters. It's also really sweet for the nostalgia factor for me of like, there's a character in the 3rd book that gets introduced that I loved, and he ends up having like a bit of a downward trajectory throughout the series where like I no longer, when I was reading the later books in the series, I didn't really like him anymore. But he's so good in like in the first handful. Like I remember just loving him so much. So that's really nice too. That's an aside, that like just a personal thing. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and again, I'm getting used to the audiobook narration. I think this might be fun to like dip in and out of and sort of reread, honestly, which I wasn't really expecting. I was like, oh my god, when I first read these books, I did rate them 5 stars. I mean, I didn't even have Goodreads at the time, but when I got Goodreads, I went and rated like all the books 5 stars. I wouldn't necessarily say they're 5, but from the way this is going, it's gonna be a solid 4. Which I really thought like, oh my god, I'm gonna reread these and it's gonna be like a 2. No. No. It holds up. It holds up, it's good. Besties, this is unrelated, but I found out today I took a food sensitivities test, blood test, and found out that I have a high sensitivity to eggs, and then moderate to most dairy. So I just looked through my pantry, and most of the foods that I eat pretty regularly have eggs or milk in them. So I'm gonna do, like, this is not a food thing vlog, but just so you know, since I just said that, I'm gonna eventually do a thing where I'm eliminating like all of it and then seeing if I can like handle it in foods and stuff, but I need to finish all of my foods that I have before I start that. Because otherwise I'm gonna have all this food that's gonna go to waste. I'm gonna finish all those foods and then start an elimination experiment and see what happens. But anyway, I just had to mention that. I'm more than 90, like I'm like 92% of the way into Circus of the Damned. Still really liking it. There were a few more problematic bits that have popped up, so I spoke slightly too soon about Anita Blake holding, I mean it does still hold up writing wise, and like themes and the characters and everything like I said earlier. But there are some things like sexual assault is still so prevalent in urban fantasy, or at least it was back in like, this was again early 90s when this was written, so honestly it's not as bad as I would have thought it would be, and just some like, you know, general like possessiveness of characters and characters like crossing boundaries and things, which again I'm sort of forgiving for a little bit of the times, but there is also just like some words used that are no longer appropriate. Like for example, there's a character that would be classified as like, I don't know if they have dwarfism or if they're like little person, whatever, uses the M slur. So stuff like that is definitely happening. There's a little bit of like the sort of like, not like other women kind of ideas and threads and stuff, but again, since this is an ongoing series, I do feel like a lot of that stuff has changed with the times instead of the author just like digging their heels in. But I would still recommend this series if you are okay with looking past some of the things that are very dated from its time, because I do think for a urban fantasy it does hold up. Also for Kate Daniels, I'm 47% of the way into this. So of these two series, I think these are gonna be the two best. They remind me a lot of each other in that they're like well crafted, right? Like the writing is good. There's still some issues with like, Kate also has this like sort of not like other girls. She does a lot of like, I don't know if this improves as the series goes on, I'm assuming she does, but she wants to like fight and smart mouth everyone that she runs into, which like I'm okay with, but I'm also like, why are you getting in fights with like literally everyone? They are so much more powerful than you, which there is something going on with her that like, maybe it's because she has some power that I just don't know about yet, but anyway, that's definitely happening, and I'm like, girl, you're getting yourself in trouble for no reason. But she acknowledges that, she's self-aware. But her and Anita feel similar to me, sort of in that way, except for Anita is like incredibly powerful, so she can kind of like back it up. Not that Kate isn't. Anyway, they remind me of each other a little bit, and then the world building of both of them is just like next level. I would say Kate Daniels so far is the more complicated maybe of the two, but both of them have like, are up there as far as like, not advanced level, because urban fantasy cannot really be like advanced, but I would say like if you are not experienced with urban fantasy, I would say they're more advanced, but they're also like easier to get into. I would say they're more advanced world building and more complicated world building of a lot of the urban fantasy that I've read. Like a lot of urban fantasy will stick to like one sort of subtype, like this will be all about shifters, or this will be all about like the fae. This is like, both of them are like all of it, which is kind of fun. But since I'm listening to both of them at the same time, and both of them are covering like murder mysteries, and both of them like work with the police, kind of like, there's a little bit of overlap there, but distinct enough that my brain can definitely like tell the difference, obviously. I think I might do a video or a TikTok or both on different supernatural creatures within urban fantasy series and ranking them on like what I like more, not necessarily ones that I've ranked like super low, but just like whose lore I like the most within, you know, like vampires, werewolves, other kinds of shifters, whatever, necromancers, like those things pop up in a lot of series. Fae, so I might do a video like ranking some of those. Let me know if you'd like to see that. So yeah, after I finish Anita Blake, which will probably be tonight, I am thinking I'm gonna see if I can get Prey on audio, and if I can, I might listen to it on audio. I'm a little like, I don't know, because audio can make or break, because I did make a purchase of House of whatever, Crescent City, the first Crescent City book, which technically falls under urban fantasy, so I feel like I could start that during this readathon if I listen to another audiobook. But if that one I can't get on audio, I'll wait till I finish Kate Daniels and I'll read the final Binti book on audio, which is not for this readathon. But it'd be nice to keep doing an audiobook, or maybe I'll just keep reading another Anita book, because I've been listening to them more while I'm going on walks. And then I've been playing the game Graveyard Keeper like constantly after work and like in my evenings, and I'll play that for like an hour or more, and I listen to like an hour or more of audiobook because you don't need to like listen to anything in the game. So I'm getting a lot of audiobook reading done that way. But my prediction is that I'm probably gonna end up giving both of these potentially 4 stars. I guess I can't really say for Kate Daniels yet, but the Anita book that I'm reading is gonna be a solid 4, I think. I did end up finishing Circus of the Damned today, and I'm moving on already to Lunatic Cafe, which is the 4th book in the series. Because it's just so easy to listen to on audio, and I feel like I can get through, usually it takes me like about 4 days with the rate I've been like playing games and listening, so I can get through that before the end of the readathon, I think. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'll read Binti and stuff after. I could not find Prey on audiobook, so I'll be reading that on physical copy after I finish Kate Daniels. In there, the like big climax that you would think would be the end of the book like happened 50% of the way through. So it's obviously gonna be like a twist, which will be interesting. I'm also sitting here like, okay, well, one, there's a trope that's like in almost all urban fantasy books that I sort of love, not because it's a trope that I'm like, oh my god, I get like giddy over, but is more so like, it's in every single one it seems like, and I just love it, where like the woman main character is always like, I'm gonna date this guy, and or I'm like interested in this guy because he's human, and then he's like blatantly not. And she like finds out he isn't. It's happened in literally every single one of these books. Well, actually, I don't know if it's happened in Kate Daniels yet, but I'm assuming it will. I'm also sitting here like, who's the love interest? And has he shown up? Like, I'm kind of feeling like her and the shifter guy. There's a lot of shifter guys, but if you've read the series, you know, that way you're not getting spoiled if you haven't read the series. I feel like they have the most chemistry. And it would make sense for urban fantasies from the early 2000s to go with the shifter. I kind of like him too. Anyway, I have a soft spot for shifters and vampires, but shifters in urban fantasy series, I tend to like them. A lot. So yeah, that means if I finish everything, I'll have read 1, 2, 3, 5. And will I have all of my challenges? Oh, I might not have a ghost. Now I'm curious. I'll have a vampire, I'll have a vampire book, I'll have a fae book. Oh, the ghost one, the zombies. Okay, I'll have a vampire, fae, zombie, shifter. What am I missing? Oh, creature from a religious background. There was a lamia in the last book. I'll have all my challenges. I didn't think I was gonna do that. That's exciting. Okay, I just finished Kate Daniels book 1, and Binks is demanding to make muffins on my stomach. I thought I had way more left. Turns out the last like 25% of the book was actually, or like 20, I guess, was like a Q&A, extra bonus materials and stuff. Since I was on the ebook, I didn't know that. But this one I would say is like 3.5, like a little bit above 3. I really like the world, but I feel like I need to know a little bit more. Like, I'm still a little bit confused. Like, not enough was really revealed in this book for me to know not a lot about like characters and stuff. I think the pack leader lion man is going to be her love interest, because I've seen all of the covers for the rest of the series and they all have a lion in the background, and I'm like, because she's not a lion. She's not a shifter, so I'm like, interesting. So part of me kind of wanted to continue with that series, because those are available from my library, but I'm gonna read the shifter series. I'm gonna read the next book in the shifter series, because otherwise I'll just keep putting it off. So I'm gonna read that. But then maybe like for the next handful of months, I might be dipping into like Kate Daniels, Anita Blake here for a while. I would say Kate Daniels, of all of them that I've read so far, leaned the most like horror-ish, the most graphic. I would say Kate Daniels is like the top, with like the horror graphicness of it all. And then Anita, I don't know if that's just because I'm a little bit more desensitized because I've read these stories before. Still very gory, but like not so much. And then the Fever series. So we'll see where Shifter ends up in all of that, but I would say Anita and Kate Daniels lean more horror in their urban fantasy than other series necessarily do. Also, Kate Daniels' first book would have a lot of triggers too, kind of like Anita a little bit, but a lot more like threats of SA and stuff like that, like just a lot like very icky. Like if SA is definitely a trigger for you, the like villain in that first book is very like that's his thing. So I'm like, oh god. So yeah, just the abuse of women is definitely a big thing. But yeah, I'm very interested in this little potential romance thing. So yeah, so I'll be finishing up the next book in the Anita Blake series on audio. I'm listening to that right now. And then starting the Shifter book 3. And I think Shifter only has 5 books in the series, so if I do like book 3, then I will keep reading that series this year and hopefully finish that up this year. I'm having a grand old time. So we have a 2-star, we have a 3.5, and we have a 4. I'd say that's pretty good. Hello. It is the day before the last day of Shiftathon. I am 50% of the way into Pride by Rachel Vincent, which is the 3rd book in the Shifter series. I've had a super long break from that series because I really didn't like the 2nd book, and I am really enjoying this 3rd one. I think probably because I had such a long break. This is interesting too because it's different than the rest of the books that I've really read for Shiftathon in that it's about shifters, it's about werecats, and so you're actually getting like pack dynamics and things where in the other books, if there are shifters, which there were in all the other series too, you're not getting like first-hand POV of like all of those dynamics. So I would say that this series, it's much more character driven. There's definitely a plot, but it's a quieter plot. Like it's just involving the pack stuff. Right now they're out in like the wilderness in Appalachia, and there's like stuff kind of going on, but it's much more pack dynamics, character relationships, things like that, which might make it slower to some people if you don't like the characters. Like this is definitely a series that you have to like the characters. You can't really be in it for like the world building or like the plot's like interesting, but like not as much as like some of the plots of like Kate Daniels or Anita Blake that have that like Monster of the Week plot. I personally find that more interesting from a plot perspective, but I like these for the character perspective. I would say of all the books that I've read besides Anita, because I have long-standing nostalgia with those characters, the relationship, the main relationship dynamic in this series is probably my favorite of all the ones that I've read for Shiftathon. It's also book 3, so we've had more of like a long-standing thing. It's 2 like almost like second chance, like they grew up sort of in love. There's this like just drawn to each other thing. And it's interesting because again, I'm glad I had a break because in book 2 I really didn't like him. He got like overly sort of possessive and weird about some stuff in a way that I really didn't like. But in this book, he's back to being like, okay, you can be a little bit possessive. Not really possessive, it's more like protective because you're like a werecat. You have these animal type tendencies. This is very much about like animal and like pack dynamics in this series. So him having some of those tendencies, I don't mind completely because she even has them too. He just was a little bit too much in book 2, but he's like leveled back out in book 3, and now I'm like, their tension and their angst I'm really digging. So halfway through this book, I'm hoping to read about 60% of it today and then finish the other 40 tomorrow before the end of the readathon. I'm also going to read a little bit more of Lunatic Cafe, which is interesting too because it's another, like the main plot in Lunatic Cafe, which is book 4 in the Anita Blake series that I'm listening to on audio. That's really involving the werewolf pack. So, but you're not getting first-hand pack dynamics. See, all these urban fantasy books, tons of fun. I am shocked continually about how much I'm like genuinely enjoying all of these books. Like, besides the Fever series. Everything else since then has been solid like 3.5 and up, and I think this will be 2 unless something drastic happens in the last half. I fully expected to be reading this and being like, this is all trash, but like I'm kind of, these are really good. I'm having a good time with these. I think I want to set this here. New angle into my skeleton. Fitting for this. I just finished up the last 2 books this evening for Shiftathon. I read 5 books. So exciting. If I'm ever in a reading slump and I forget this, remind me that I read urban fantasy hella fast, in like 2 to 3 days per book, so that's always fun. So I finished up Pride. The books in the Shifter series, I can never remember their names. I finished up Pride by Rachel Vincent, book 3. I will say I liked it more than book 2. I still didn't like it as much as I loved book 1, but this reminded me why I loved book 1. This series, especially when I'm reading them all back to back with other urban fantasy series, it reminded me that this is a much slower series. It is much more of the character dynamics and things because you are getting sort of like Pride Pack life. And it's just much more about the dynamics and the character relationships and things, which I do like, but I do think these books could be shorter. Her books are typically in like 400 to 500 a page range, and they really should be in the 300 page range. Like they're too long for no reason. They just add so much fluff. Like so little happened in this book. Actually, it could have really been tightened up. Plus, Faith as a character I like, but in this book, and she did maybe in the last book too. I don't remember like what all I hated about the last book, but all of the female characters that I've read about in the last week are all spunky, just very much willing to get in a fight whenever, do not back down, really stubborn, whatever. The other characters like Kate Daniels and Anita Blake are my two favorites for this category. I feel like they can back up what they're saying. Faith usually can't and just gets herself in a lot of shit for like no reason. So yeah, I mean, I do like that she's the only one that kind of stands up for like the shitty gender roles that this world has, this like pack werecat world, but otherwise I'm like, Faith. So there is a little bit of that can be a little bit frustrating, is that this world is like incredibly sexist, but the narrative isn't, in that she's always like fighting against that, but it can be a little repetitive, especially with how long these books are. So I'm still intrigued about this series. I'm going to continue. I liked the couple more in this. Faith and Mark are like the main couple in this series, and I didn't like them so much in book 2. I thought his temper problems got a little bit too targeted at her in a way. That was one of the things I didn't like about book 2. In book 3, that's kind of rectified. He still is a werecat. He still has some of those like alpha male dynamics, but like I mentioned earlier, I think in this video, and I also made a TikTok about it this week, I forgive sort of territorial, jealous kind of behavior from like were-shifter creatures. Because they're animals, like they're doing animal things. So yeah, if my animals, my pets fight over my lap, of course, there's gonna be some characters being a little bit defensive about their favorite human or person or whatever. So I forgive that a little bit. And he was much more in line with like reasonable, animalistic behavior in this one. So I was pulling for them more. I like them because they are almost like a second chance, been in love for a while. They're not friends to lovers like they've always been in love. They're angsty and I like it. A lot of external circumstances keeping them apart. Anyway, I talked about this one a lot, but that one was 3 out of 5 stars. I do prefer for my urban fantasies the monster of the week kind of mystery along with my world building and my like character stuff. And I would say the Shifter series doesn't have like great world building, like it's a little fast and loose with that. It's really only about shifters. So I prefer like Anita Blake and Kate Daniels for that. So let me say, the last book that I read was The Lunatic Cafe by Laurel K. Hamilton, so book 4 in the Anita Blake series. Loved this. This one was like real, like a lot was going on. Like there were probably like 3 different sort of like baddies that they were going after. Not Instagram baddies, like paranormal creatures. And there was all of that, so like suspense. You're wondering like what's connected to what, very fun. The writing continues to be fun. This book was slightly more ACAB, which was nice, because when I read book 3, I did notice, I think I mentioned in here, that there was a little bit more like, let the cops do their job, they're good at it. And in this one it was like, oh, the cops are bad guys. And it was like, that's right. But this is one of the plots that I remember from when I first read these books. This is one of the books that like stuck out. Like I remembered a lot of these plot points with like the monster of the week stuff. So that was fun, that this was like a very nostalgic one for me. Also, all the character stuff that's happening in this book is a lot of fun because this is when the start of like the love triangle happens. This is a series that I've mentioned a lot in this video, turns into like a reverse harem, smutty series or whatever. But in the initial, it's not like that. The initial like 12 to 15 books. And this book 4 is the start of like a love triangle between the vampire and the werewolf, and like Twilight wishes it could, honestly. It's so good, the things that happen within this dynamic even. So I really dig it. This one was 4 out of 5 stars for me as well. Again, not just, I truly believe it's not just nostalgia speaking for me. I think the world building is great in this series. I think that the writing holds up. Are there some themes that are like problematic because it was written in '96? Yes. But I would say even for the times, it was like fairly progressive. There's things that have obviously like changed since then, and I'm sure that the books have like gone with that change. I don't know, we'll see. I haven't read like the more recent ones in the last like 10 to 15 years. But I like the characters, I like the world building, I like all the different kinds of paranormal creatures that are involved, so yeah. For this little wrap up, ranking all of the books that I read, I would say, I really can't rank, I guess I can. I'd say my favorite of the 5 would probably be Lunatic Cafe, just as number 1. And number 2 is probably the other Anita book, so Circus of the Damned. 3 is Kate Daniels' Magic Bites. 4 is Pride, the Shifter book. And then bottom of the barrel is Blood Fever. So I'm not continuing with Blood Fever, but I'm continuing with the rest of these series. So will I catch up on the Anita Blake series? Eventually. Probably not even this year, but now I have them as like really fun audiobooks to read. I also do want to continue on the Kate Daniels series. I don't know when that'll happen, but I probably will try to finish Shifters before Kate Daniels. I don't know, hard to tell because it's Shifters, I don't like reading them like back to back because they are a little bit slower, where Kate Daniels I kind of could. I don't know, we'll see. This was fun. There will definitely be another Shiftathon. I don't know when. But there will be, because this was delightful. Maybe like, can't promise that we're gonna do seasonally, but we're gonna at least probably do one around Halloween, because why not? So yeah, delightful. Comment below, let me know what books you read for Shiftathon, how you found your exploration of the urban fantasy paranormal genre. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.